Hello everybody, and hello if you're watching back later. I've got a very exciting talking cafe to introduce today. Today we're talking about fostering in Somerset. But first, I'm joined by Sarah Hill, our new Taunton Dean Village agent. Unfortunately, she couldn't join in the introducing the new village agents the other day. She was busy, so couldn't join in that one. So, Sarah, if you just want to give yourself a little introduction and a little bit of your background, and then we'll start the talking cafe.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Sarah. I've recently joined the Taunton Dean team as a village agent, and I will be covering areas such as North Curry, Creek St Michael, Priorswood and Holway area. My background, I've got 20 years experience of working with vulnerable people in their time of need. Which I very much enjoyed, and I am really looking forward to carrying on that, helping out in the community with the Community Council for Somerset, and look forward to meeting lots of new people and helping them the best way I can.
Lovely, thank you, Sarah. So Sarah's already proven herself to be a valuable asset to the team with her knowledge. She's settled in really well, and she's already taken on cases and away with it. So you might have already met Sarah, or you might do in the near future. So welcome to the team anyway.
Thank you.
On today's session, we're going to be talking about fostering in Somerset. And I'm joined by Lois, who's an assessing social worker for fostering in Somerset. Good morning, Lois.
Hi, good morning, Ruby.
Morning.
Morning. I'm also joined by Jane, who is a foster carer. So good morning, Jane.
Good morning. Hi, Ruby, Sarah, Lois.
Morning.
Hello. Morning. So Lois, if we start with you, let's take it from the beginning. What is fostering and who can foster?
Thank you for having me today. Fostering is when someone, an adult, anyone who's 21, is able to take in a child, providing them with a safe, caring, nurturing home. It's usually children that are not normally to remain at home with their parents for different circumstances. So really, anybody can foster. Anyone who is over 21 has got a spare room and has got the time and energy to look for a child. We're looking for. They need not to have any serious convictions. Your previous sort of childhood sometimes does matter, but it matters in a good way because sometimes we learn from our past experiences. So they need to be resilient. So anyone who's got like within that category or those qualities can foster really.
Sorry, I muted that. That's great. So if I can sort of move between you and Jane, because I find a lot of things are obviously relevant between both of you, so I think it'd be interesting. Jane, how did you find the process of becoming a foster carer for the first time?
It's
and when was it?
Sorry.
Oh, how long ago was it that you became a foster carer?
I was approved in February 2019. 2019. Now, I found it very eye-opening to look back on my childhood, my upbringing, my life experiences. It's useful. It can be frustrating because it is such a long process, and you do feel that you're so wanting to have these children in your home and start your journey with fostering that the process is quite long. Lois was my assessing social worker. And I think I was her first foster carer to go through panel. So she and I did it together really, and it was a great, for me, I found it very, very useful.
Lovely. Did you feel a lot of support the whole way through? Did you feel comfortable with the questions that were asked?
Yeah, very, very much so. It was I would say between Lois and Trevor, gosh, he initially met me, and it was him because I'd been turned down previously by a private fostering agency. So I'd already lacked in confidence, thinking I'm never going to get this dream. And they both came in and they said, you have it, you can do it. We went through everything. It was all explained to me. And everybody was great. They're so supportive right the way up to panel day, and also after panel day when the emotions get to you, when you get what you want. So yeah, no, it's good.
Fantastic. What was your background before fostering, Jane?
I worked in maternity, and obviously with maternity you get a lot of teenagers come through, and we had one young girl who had to go on to a mother and baby unit, and there was 3 in the whole of the southwest that could take her, and it took her from her hometown in Bath all the way down to South Devon. So she'd had a new baby, she was taken out of her hometown, so her whole life was upturned, and I just thought I could do this, I could support these children. And as my journey began, I developed more that I thought actually I could help more children by being the ones that get the teenagers or the younger children and help them not become the teenage mums. You know, so I diversified and became sibling group for my panel, and that's what I went with.
That's fantastic. Lovely. And how did it feel when you finally got approved and you got your dream?
I burst into tears and walked all the way through the offices in Somerset crying. But it was amazing because I have great support from my 2 daughters. I'm a single carer as well, so I don't have the adult partner support. And my daughter came with me to panel, so I had that with me. And the whole emotion of what I'd worked for actually it took 2 years, because not through Somerset, it was quicker through Somerset, but because of the letdown with the agency and then having to go through this, it was a whole 2 years before I got through. And I just kept plodding on because it was what I wanted. I knew I could do it. I knew I could help these children. And that's where I am now.
Brilliant. So, Lois, would you say Jane is a perfect example for a success story?
She is a perfect example. As she was talking, actually, I was remembering because how Jane applied to be with Somerset. Actually, she had applied with a private fostering agency, and as part of the procedures, they request some information from us. So they requested some information, which we did share with them, and they were sort of we did highlight that there was involvement where school has raised concerns about one of Jane's daughter's school attendance. And because of that, without sort of them looking further into the information, they decided that she was not an ideal candidate. So Jane came back to us, and us exploring the issues further with what had caused, that there's reason behind every action and every behavior, looking into detail why Jane's daughter had problems sort of going to school. We actually figured out it wasn't Jane's problem. She was supporting a daughter with health issues, so she had to balance between the daughter attending medical appointments and also going into school and working with the school. And there are a lot of assumptions that are made regarding people that don't sort of with issues that come up like that. And with us looking into those issues and communicating further with the school, we actually find out that with that history and with that experience, she had a lot of skills and experience to bring to fostering. So it was quite a journey that we had. Like what Jane said, it was my first assessment since I joined the team to take to panel as well. And it was sort of, that's why we said anybody can apply to foster. Look at your history, we just have to explore it together, look how that affects your application and in what way you're able to do things differently. And that's how we approach our assessments. Really, people need to be open-minded, to be flexible, and to have the ability to encourage a child to engage with their education and other matters that are sort of part of their lives really.
That's brilliant. And I think it must be very frustrating have something written on paper, such as attendance, but not actually looking at the bigger picture and the causes of that. So going back to the start then, once somebody makes that initial phone call to you to say, I'm interested, how does that all escalate from there? What do you cover in the first initial phone call to what, and then the start of the assessment process?
Okay, so as soon as somebody makes that a phone call, one of our what we call them our pharaohs, one of our team members that man the offices, the lines really take a little bit of more information from the inquirer, just to understand them a little bit more, whether they've got a spare room, their age, their sort of overall health, how they are, and their availability really. So from then on, once they are satisfied that they've got the basics to proceed, it can either be directed to being an initial home visit or attending an information session. An information session is quite similar to what we're doing here, really, where further information about fostering and if foster carer also attends, and people can ask as many questions about fostering as they want. Or if it's an initial home visit, and assessing social worker, one who's like me or any member of my team really, then arranges to visit the inquirer at home. Because of the COVID, we are doing that virtually at the moment. So those initial home visits are still happening, but they're happening virtually. So it's about the assessing social worker having those discussions, talking through the process with the inquirer, understanding what their circumstances are and whether they will be sort of able to progress any further. And if it's deemed that there's potential there for somebody to foster, they are then referred to what we call the skills to foster training. It's a 2-day training. We usually do it on Saturdays, but we've tried to sort of as well try midweek days as well. So it's usually over a 2-day period where different issues about fostering are discussed. It can be attachment issues, it can be the procedures in fostering, the placement issues, how to support a child, issues of discrimination, equality are discussed through that training. So once people have attended that skills to foster and they're still happy to proceed with fostering, and they feel that this is the right time for them to go, they can put in their application. And once that application gets to us, an allocated social worker like myself is allocated to work with that with the applicant, and the whole process takes about between 4 to 6 months. So within that application, we do checks, we do DBX checks. We do if they've lived out of the country for more than 3 months in their past. We also do character checks with the countries that they've lived in. We also do, if they've got any children, we also do adult child references, employer references, personal references. We also do medicals, just when your doctor just gives an overview of your health and if there are any issues that can sort of can affect you fostering really. Most of the time these issues are addressable. People might have some health issues, but if they can manage on a daily day-to-day basis, I'm sure they'll be able to manage with fostering as well. So excuse me. So once that fostering assessment is completed, we then go to panel. And the panel is sort of different members really with different backgrounds from teaching, health, sometimes they've got counselors and panel chairs well who are there who look at all the paperwork that has been put together by the assessing social worker. And then the foster carer comes to the panel with the social worker, and just as sort of have that discussion, any clarifications that need, then they can sort of make a recommendation whether somebody they agree with somebody fostering, or if there are any issues they do identify them, they can make a sort of provisional recommendations. And once that has been done, it goes to what we call the agency decision maker, who is part of the management team of the children's social care, who then looks at all the paperwork again and the recommendations and the minutes of the panel, and then they make their decision. Usually, if the panel recommends, the agency decision maker is likely to recommend. And if there are any issues, it is made known to the foster care and the social worker that this is a conditional approval, but there needs to be further exploration, or from that point somebody's ratified and they are ready to foster really. So yeah, like what I said, the whole process can take 4 to 6 months, and we wouldn't take anybody to panel when we know that panel are unlikely to approve them. If there are any issues, major issues that we identified during the assessment, we tend to address them with the applicant at that particular stage rather than taking them all the way to the panel when we know that they are not going to be approved.
That's great. So really that you're keeping all parties informed from an early position in the
Yeah,
application process, and
yeah.
you know, making people aware of the length that everything takes to, and the depth of the checking, really the background checks.
Yes.
So can anybody reapply once they've been turned down if they've got you know, various reasons which can be amended, which means that they would be suitable? Is there a cooling off process before they can restart, or is that something you will address at the time and rectify so they can take it further?
Yes, it is something that we usually ratify at the time that we inform them. And sometimes some applicants do realize once that start the process, or anything can happen during the process where they feel they're no longer able to proceed, then they can take time out. And we've had applicants that have had sort of loss in the family, or they've been affected, their health has been affected, or they've been changing their circumstances and they feel that they're no longer able to proceed. So that application can then be ended at that point. And whenever they feel ready to come back to us, they can come back to us. And each circumstance is different, so we have to look at it. And then there are others that we actually identify that there may be issues that need to be addressed before somebody can progress. And we'll tell them that maybe if your mental health becomes more stable, and we've got maybe a more positive medical from your doctor, then from that point we will revisit whether we'll be able to sort of assess again and sort of proceed. So, like what I said, it really depends on circumstances. Where we feel that this is not viable at any time, not even in the future, we are able to say that. And usually it's relating to the references that we get, and also it's relating to the convictions that people might have as well.
So going back to the convictions and the background checks, is that covered by the council then? Is that those costs are already covered, or is that something that a foster carer would have to pay up front?
We pay for the DBSs. The council covers all the costs on that one. The only ones that the applicant needs to cover is if we need to do a good conduct check with an outside country. Those are the only costs that they will cover. We'll guide them through the process of how they can do that, but they have got to pay the cost for the good conduct certificates from other countries.
Brilliant, that's great. So then going to the range of ages for fostering, then what are the ranges of the ages? Can you foster, say if you wanted more than one child, can you take on multiple ages, or do you stay in the same age range? How does that work with that, and how does it work with having your own children at home as well?
Yeah, our fostering ranges from 0 to 18 really. Anyone, any child under the age of 18 can be fostered. And it's part of the assessment that is done by the assessing social worker, and the discussions they have with the person who's applying, where their strengths are. For example, they might have their own children. I'm currently assessing somebody who's got their own child really. So it's just looking at what age group do they want to foster, and how would the foster child fit into the family home. And some people can have children that are younger or older than their children, depending on their strengths really, and their experience, and the skills that they have, their abilities as well, and the room that they have, their flexibility, their work. If they're saying they want a 0 to 4 child, for example, we also look like how their flexibility, are they working, who's going to be looking after the child when they are away. So age ranges vary, and it's quite sort of open, and it's discussion that we have with different foster carers regarding what age groups they want to foster. Some would say 0 to 18. Jane is interested in teenagers, so she fosters teenagers only. So again, yeah, it's quite flexible. 0 to 18, any age range really.
That's brilliant. And do you know when, so you've established now you want to be a foster carer, and you passed all the checks and you're about to be a foster parent or carer for the very first time. Do you know up front if it's going to be a short-term arrangement or a long-term arrangement, or is this something that you sort of assess along the way? Something sort of could be a short-term, a few months, and then extend to a long period. How do you know about this, and how is the communication in place with that?
Yeah, so this is the part of the approval that we put across to panel really when we are doing our assessments and we are working with the applicants. Usually applicants, they really are aware of what they are able to do because they've got other commitments or the time that they have available to foster. So it's part of that assessment to say, for example, if they are saying they want to do short term, that is when they have a child for a couple of weeks, not more than that, or intermediate fostering, which is up to 2 years. And we're looking at their flexibility, their availability as well. So it's part of that recommendation to say they want to be approved for short term. Some want to do short break only, some want to do weekends only, some want to do long term, but long term is very difficult unless somebody have got significant experience of childcare and of fostering before. That's when we can put them to long term. But we discuss all the different types of fostering, what is available to them and what they are interested in doing, and sort of putting that against their availability, their skills and their experience. And then that will be part of the recommendation we put forward to panel.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much. And the other topic really that comes along with fostering is the finance side of it. I know that money's always a bit of a weird subject to talk with people. But is fostering a paid role?
Yeah, so when people foster, they get allowances for the child. This is to cover their food, pocket money, equipment that they may need, clothing, activities, going out, expenses. So they get allowances for our not to four, for example, they get 143.57 weekly allowance for child not to four, and for 5 to 10-year-olds they get £163 weekly, and for 11 to 15-year-olds they get 203.59, that is per child, and for 16 plus they get 247, sort of around that figure. And if they've got another child, if they've got two or three child, they get an additional payment to that weekly allowance. That's for the children. And then there's a fee that is paid to the foster carer as well per child that they have in placement as well. So those are paid, usually they're paid weekly to cover the cost of the child and also for the fees for the foster carer to allow them to continue fostering.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much. Long-term fostering. So Jane obviously looks after older teenagers. So I guess she's assisting them into adulthood as well.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that lead, say, if somebody wanted then for you to become their permanent, next of kin, their permanent parent, because you've supported them all this way? What's the legalities with that? Is that a thing that's able to happen once somebody has spent an awful lot of their years being supported by a person, they've decided collectively as the child, young adult or foster carer, that's what they would like to do to make that a permanent connection? Is that something you assist with or help with at all?
Yeah, there's possibilities for that. It all depends what the sort of long-term care plan for that child is really. For example, if a foster carer have been approved to care for not to 4 or not to 11, for example, those are quite young children, even older children in some cases. And then they're approved maybe to do intermediate, but as they gain experience in fostering and as that child remains in the placement, maybe their plan is long-term being in foster care until their adulthood. Then that foster carer can then come back to the panel to have their approval changed to long-term fostering. And when they're long-term fostering, means that foster carer is sort of the permanent carer for that child, really permanent primary carer for that child. And if it's working well in that placement, the supervising social worker, who is usually supporting the foster carer, will then make sort of guidance regarding special guardianship orders, so that the foster carer can have some form of parental responsibility over that child. But as the child remains in placement and as they are placed with the foster carer, and depending on their care plan, there's a possibility, and that can be discussed at any point with the supervising social worker, with the child's social worker, regarding how they can support to have that permanency within that foster placement.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
So just one more sort of area I'd like to cover with you, and then we'll sort of hand over to Jane, who I'm sure has got some stories to tell and would love to share her experience. So obviously coronavirus is a massive thing at the moment, and it's becoming a new normal way of life. So what has the fostering team put in place to ensure that people can still go ahead with applications, children are still being placed, and that people are feeling safe at the moment?
Yeah. So at the moment, like what I explained earlier, if we do progress to initial home visits where we just need to have a little bit more information about the person who's making the inquiry, we're doing all our those visits via virtual. So we just arrange with the person who's inquiring. We set up sort of a system quite similar to this, really, where we can sit down, have a chat. They can ask us as many questions as they want, and also we can get as much information as we can from them for that necessary for that initial stage, really. And then they can show us around the home. That's the joy of technology. They can show us around the home using their whether the laptop or whatever gadget that they're using. And that's the same when we start up the application process and the assessment process as well. We can arrange for sessions to be done virtually like this. But I'm sure you can understand it is actually good practice that during that 6 months, 4 to 6 months period, at least we have at least one home visit to the home, because we also need to do household risk assessments. We also need to do pet assessments if they've got any pets. So at least one, and we follow the government guidelines, really, when we're going into anybody's house with regarding masking up, sanitizing, and social distancing. So we maintain that, but it's not every session that we're coming into your home. We might arrange one session where the assessing social worker will be straight to say, I'm coming to do the household risk assessment, I'm going to do the pest questionnaire, and also to have a look around, just to have the feel of the home and what it is like, and actually visibly see where the child's bedroom is and how it's going to work.
Brilliant. And you briefly just touched on pets. How are pets involved in the fostering process, and what would, what pet placement would make fostering tricky?
I'm sure Jane will add to that as well. When I asked Jane, likes to live in the countryside. She had donkeys, cats, dogs, fish. So she had all those. It's just looking at how friendly the pets are around children. And some children benefit from pets because they can be therapeutic. And also, we just want to say that they're not dangerous pets that are a risk to children and to people coming in the home. So we just have a look, well, what pests do you have, how safe are they, and do they interact with people around the home.
Brilliant. That's great.
Yeah.
Lovely. So is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Lois, before we hand over to Jane?
Just encourage people to say you can foster, look at your experience, look at what you can bring. As long as you've got a room, you're an adult, you've got the time, the love, the care to give to a child, you can make a difference. It's good to be making a difference to a child's life.
And I guess the contact numbers below there, and you also have a website which I've just posted into the comments. So,
Yeah.
Don't feel pressured to take things further. If you've got a few questions, please give them a call. Please visit the website. There are questions and answers on the website that I have read through myself. So please reach out, and you can make a massive change in a child's life.
Could I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
I was wondering what happens to the child when they do reach the age of 18, if they are in foster, how do you get involved with that?
So the possibility of two things happening. There's what we call the staying put arrangement, where the child and the foster carer are in agreement that they want to remain in the home. So we've got that staying put arrangement that when putting a child over 18, they can continue living with the foster carer whilst they attend college or they're furthering their education, really. And they are supported by the living care team, or the living care team then becomes involved in sort of supporting that child becoming more independent. It might be living on their own in the community, but there's a support package that is put around them by the living care team. So it's not like age 18, there you go, you don't have anyone to look after you. We've got to, there's that transition planning actually from around 16, 17. There's close working between the child looked after team and the living care team in terms of those transition planning, so that the child remains supported even beyond their 18th birthday.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. So hello again, Jane. I'm just going to
Hi.
make you a bit bigger so you can share your story with us. And lovely. And Sarah Hill, village agent, will be asking you a few questions that we've prepared. And then if anybody comes into the comments, we'll read those out to you as well. We actually have a question here. What's it really like being a foster carer? What are the challenges and rewards? I feel like this is a very important one because I feel like you've got success stories, which is a big, but they're not always a success story, are they? You do have challenges that go along the way with it as well. So.
Yeah, being a foster carer it's a huge change to your life. These children come to you and you've had your children or your life, and you know, they're not you and they're not your children. So you have to find a way of making them yours. That sounds maybe a little bit sort of possessive, but making them yours, bringing them into your way of life without telling them it's right, because actually what we've had may not be right to them. Their birth families and their heritage is so important to them that they may fight you. They may not want to sit at the table and eat their greens. They may never have been made to do that. Christmas may not have been Father Christmas comes and you have your presents and you have a family meal. Life is different for all of us, and you have to be flexible enough to have that reality on board when you take fostering on. We all think that we have had either the best life or we are right, but actually these children teach you that you're not always right, and it's most important that you accept them and for what they are, and not for what you think they should be. It's very important as well that your life doesn't get mixed up in theirs, in your past life, I should say, because like I've just said, they are not you and they are not your children. But fostering is amazing. I have had the best 3 teenagers that I could have hoped for. The 2 boys came to me, unfortunately, after their foster carer had died. So not only had they had their historical life, they'd suddenly had this other loss of somebody that they'd been with for a year. They came to me slightly angry because one didn't want to live in the country, one wanted to live in the country. And you have to build on what you've got and what you can give them. And I have 2 of the best boys I could ever ask for. We were joined by a young lady in February of last year, just before lockdown. She was at the point that school were going to expel her, that she hated everybody. Social workers were horrible. Somerset Council were out to get her. And she was in such a negative place. Lockdown for her came at the best possible time. She stopped communicating with everybody because I took her phone off her. And she knuckled down at school, homeschooling. She became our family. I met this young lady when I first came out of panel. She came to me on respite and she came with her siblings, so I met the whole family, and then she got put into permanent care and they got split up, but I didn't have any of the 3 siblings. But she came to me for horse therapy, and this is where the pets come in. She came to me once a week and we went out with my horse and we stroked her, brushed her, rode her, and we talked about everything. And in February 2020, she ran away from her carers because she wasn't happy in her care. She hated the world. And I got a hearsay because she's close to my children. And on Instagram, she messaged, "I've run away." So I contacted Somerset and said, "I am here. I am full because I have my 2 spaces taken, but I do have a spare room. So if she needs somewhere to put her head down tonight, I'm about." And she is still with me. And when I went to my review after a year with the fostering team, they've changed it so that I now can have 2 permanent children plus 1 on a temporary basis. But I have a feeling that, you know, these 3 kids are going to be with me for a long time, and we are such a happy unit. Mine is a very positive fostering experience. It's had its ups and downs. I've had the older one, who's a little bit taller than me, stand me down, but Trevor Goss gave me the best bit of advice at the beginning of my fostering journey: is only pick the fights you can win. And that has helped me through all of the issues that we have here. And something good about fostering is when your children come to you the first time and they open up. Or my youngest foster one here, he was doing some homeschooling the other day, and I heard him go, "Now Jane would say, use what you've got and create a solution." And I just thought, I've done it. I've won with him. He's actually learned that life isn't about throwing your hands up in the air and going, "I can't do it." It's about looking and doing. And this is what you get out of fostering. It's seeing these young people change from the angry, the frustrated, the sad, the lonely, and becoming part of you and your family. And this is what I came into it for, and this is what I get out of it. So go for it. That's all I can say, is go for it, give it a try, because it's really worth it. It's so amazing.
Sounds like you're doing a fantastic job, Jane. What sort of support do you get from the foster, service, when you do come across those challenges, with the children that you're fostering?
They are mainly supportive. I've got to say, I'm very lucky that my supervising social workers, although unfortunately for me, I've had quite a few because of going off having babies, getting promotions. I've just been the unlucky one not to have a continuation, but I've had lots of different social workers supporting me, and they've been very good with all their different advice. And actually having more is quite good, because they've all got, like us, we've all got different opinions on things, so you can draw from their experiences to help you. And they're always there. They're on a phone, they're on an email, and it's almost immediately, if you contact them, they're there for you. The children each have a social worker, and again, if you get a good relationship, which I have luckily with all of mine, they are immediately there. They are there for the children, and you are there to be the children's voice, because these children don't necessarily have that ability to go get on a phone and ring somebody, or they don't know how to communicate. The children have apps that they can communicate with social services without having to come through me or their social worker. So they do have, and they have independent reviewing officers, which again is another social worker that works outside of Somerset. I've also luckily got a good relationship with them. I've got so much support. You've also got the fostering network that you can ring. You've got other foster carers, you've got support groups. There's so much out there. The only thing you have to be is slightly assertive and realise that you are those children's voices. And if you don't make a stand for them, you're not going to get any help and support. And the schools as well, they're brilliant. I can't fault them. They've supported me through anything that I've had to go through with my 3.
Sounds like you've got real sort of good support network there.
Yeah, and your family.
Of course. What would you say to others that are sort of considering fostering, whether it is for short term or, in the long term, especially, as you've just explained, there are some challenges, but by the sounds of it, the rewards of doing this does outweigh that. What is your advice to someone that would really like to go down this path?
My advice to anybody thinking about fostering is talk to your close friends and family. don't necessarily take their opinions as gospel or the hearsay or the, you know, make it your decision, but you will need these people's supports in the future. So find out if, you know, and your children, your birth children, it's so important, because these children are coming in and they're taking part of you. And my children are 24 and 22. But even them, sometimes they'll say to me, oh, you spend more time with them than you did us. But that's because my life is different now. I am a foster carer and that is my choice of career. Whereas with the girls, my girls, I was working 2 or 3 jobs. I was keeping our head above water. But all I can say to you, anybody who is thinking of fostering, give it a go, do a lot of research, come to things like this. And, you know, by all means, ring social services and talk to Somerset, because they will give you the advice you need. And just be open and honest with yourself and open and honest with those around you, because that way you will gain what you need from fostering and the build up to becoming a foster carer.
Jane, you said you touched base on you know, bits of your personality, know-how and knowledge rubbing off on your children that you're currently supporting. And I think that's amazing. And I think it must be very difficult as a teenager, you know, when you do think the world's out to get you. And it must be very difficult being moved from a place you're in to another new place, and you have to start again. And that's understandably very difficult. So it's amazing that you are patient, you're caring, you're calm, you're understanding of their needs and how to, you know, approach them and let them, you know, take the lead way with you. So that's great. So you've touched on what you've given to them, but what do they give to you? How do you feel on a daily basis? Like, what has it done for you now, as this being your career, being a foster carer?
Well, I started, this will make you smile, I started with grey hair and I now have coloured hair because it makes me feel younger. I've had to keep myself young. I'm only 52, but to a teenager, I'm ancient. It's given me an outlook on life that has made me be able to sit back and assess a lot of situations that I've been through in the past and thought, maybe I should have done it differently. It's allowing me to grow with these children. Things like homeschooling, my goodness, how school has changed. Everything about being with these children for me has given me the opportunity to be older. I have also got more time for me, which seems an odd thing when you've got children with you 24/7. But the structure of our home is routine, but routine with flexibility, because we all need to learn that life doesn't go in a routine fact. And for me, the children are very capable of slotting in, and they've slotted in. We had the honeymoon period for the first probably 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even months, and then you get the niggles, but that's no different to your own children. And you get the sibling fights. They will sound like they've been together for 30 years and they'll have the big fights. Everything about this is rewarding, but you do have to have time for yourself, and that is so important as well for you. And this is what I have found for myself, that I actually have time to sit back.
Lovely. You're not alone there. Melanie Rose has just posted. She's a former foster carer and highly recommends it. It's the most rewarding thing I have ever done. That's fantastic.
Excellent.
Lovely. I think we've covered everything we can really cover. All I'm going to keep stressing is, please, if you're just thinking about this, take Jane's advice, speak to your family, your friends, your partner, and, you know, express your interest, listen to people's advice as well and how they can support you along your journey. And please reach out to Fostering in Somerset and just inquire and see where it takes you. You know, even if it's just an inquiry because you're just interested, that initial first step can be a complete change in your life for the better. Lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, they can find us on our website, fosteringinsomerset.org.uk. The the number that is coming up on the screen. We're also on Facebook, where I understand it's going to be sort of published, and we are on Twitter, Foster Somerset. And we're also on Instagram at Fostering in Somerset. So looking forward to those inquiries coming in. Thank you.
That's great. Lovely. I will be
Thank you.
posting some links. So your Facebook page is already in the comments. That's great. So people can go ahead and join that page. And I guess you can private message questions on there, can you?
Yeah.
Lovely. That's great. And then I'll pop any other relevant links in. I've put the number in. So that's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Lois, for your knowledge and know-how and your experience as assessing social worker. And thank you so much, Jane, for talking us through your experience and telling us about your life a little. It's much appreciated. And I think anybody who's watching this, you've put a massive smile on their face. So thank you very much.
And you're all very welcome. And just do it because it's amazing.
Lovely. And thank you, Sarah, for my new right-hand lady.
Thank you for asking me.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for everybody watching back later. It's been an amazing session. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.